Hey everybody out there in internet comic book land. My name is Rene Arreola. I am an artist, writer for comic books for my own webcomic Asreeth Warrior. I'm also a freelance illustrator. And today I'm going to be working on a piece for my 2015 portfolio calendar. So this is actually a pen and ink drawing featuring my character, Asreeth Warrior, and he's actually fighting a character that we have not seen yet in the series, which has kind of been on hiatus for the last couple of months. But this is actually going to be the giant ape warrior. And what I'm doing is I'm actually going in and I'm doing some inking. The piece has been penciled and it has been completed for couple of days now. I'm now having time to come back and actually put the inks on this piece, and I'm starting in by just kind of with his right fist actually. I'm now moving on to some backgrounds, because that's really going to be helpful as I ink this piece so that I can see some contrast taking shape between the foreground, which are the characters themselves, and what is background in this piece, which is some jungle foliage, if you will. And it's actually up in the trees, because I thought that'd be a little more dramatic. So anyway, I'm starting off with some black India ink, using a pen, sorry, not a pen, but a brush, to do some feathering on the tie-ins, actually, what are part of the leaves on this part of the tree. And right now you'll see what I'm doing is I'm kind of just working on the edge here. The edge of what is where the leaves on the front tie in with some background leaves, and the background leaves are actually going to be in shadow, and the reason for that is because it actually is going to help to add some clarity and some contrast to the piece. So I don't want to actually draw, in this instance, and render all the leaves for this tree. I just actually want to highlight parts that are in front, and keep the back in the back. And because this is about a black and white, or I should say a black ink drawing on white paper, that effect is going to give me a certain amount of depth when I just push that shaded area, those background leaves, into the back by just giving it a solid fill of black. So that's what you're seeing me do right now. I'm actually working on the background. I'm working on some leaves here, and working on some trunks, or I should say some tree trunks in the background, which I'm not sure if I'm going to make those black yet, but if you can see what I'm doing here, I'm definitely going to have the leaves in the background be in shadow. And again, contrast gives your eye, your viewer, a place to kind of rest their gaze. Hopefully they'll gaze at this drawing for a nice period of time and appreciate it, for a long enough period of time and appreciate it. But moving on, I'm doing this here because the brush is going to give a nice edge in the areas of the tree, the leaves, where I want to have detail. Now in the areas where I don't want to have detail, you're going to see me switch from using this brush right here, this watercolor brush. It's probably a number 4. It has a pretty fine point on it, because I want to do detail. And you're going to see me switch, like, just a moment. I missed a spot. Let me go ahead and kind of do a little feathering on this part right there near his shoulder, near his mouth area. I take that back. I'm going to keep this brush for just a few seconds longer as I edge the black in that background where where the trees are, where the bushes, the leaves, sorry, not bushes, the leaves of the trees in the background are, near his mouth, because again, this brush has a very fine tip, has a fine point, I should say, and I use it to kind of edge in the space where I'll need to have a nice clean edge between the giant ape's teeth and the black background. So now that I've got all of this in here, what I will do is I'll switch from using this brush, watercolor brush, to using a marker. This is a Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pen, black 199. I use this quite a bit for drawing, but also to fill in the background areas, as you're seeing me do here. This is just for a solid fill of black ink. Nothing special. I don't need the super duper fancy, oh wow, watercolor brush that I had just a moment ago. I can now use this brush here, this marker brush I should say, marker pen, to just fill in this black area. And you may have heard the term spotting blacks, and this is kind of what we're doing here. I am spotting where these blacks are going to be, and nothing more to it. Just go in and fill in these areas that I painted in. I'm going to switch from this brush because I just realized I do have a bigger brush, and it will save more time. This is the Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pen Big Brush, black 199, so the same color. But now you'll see how I can just really go in there, fill in that area. You don't really have to think much about what I'm doing, and it actually goes a lot faster because this has a bigger, broader tip, and it's made for this stuff. If I were drawing large, say on a huge piece of paper, something bigger, maybe as big as this drafting table that I'm drawing on right now, because this drafting table is probably about 24 by 30 inches or so, this pen would probably be considered a fine point because of the scale. But because of the scale of this drawing that I'm working on right now, it's wide, it's big, it will cover a lot of ground pretty fast, as you can see. Going in here, just filling in. I'm not too crazy, or I'm not too worried about the fist because the gorilla's left fist here, because I've already edged in with the brush, with the paintbrush, with the watercolor brush, the area where I need to go up to, and it's not as critical as, say, trying to work in with his teeth. Like, this brush would not work well with me trying to edge in the teeth and fill in right up to that, because I'd be too afraid that I might get too close and might bleed and just wreck the teeth. Now I could use whiteout or gesso, which is what I use as my whiteout, to kind of bring some white area out back, but I don't need to because I just use that brush with the paintbrush, the watercolor brush, and that worked fine. And again, this brush right here is made for filling in these black areas, these solid black areas. I'm going to fill in just a little more right here. This just works really well. Fill it in just like this. Easy enough. Then when I'm in the wide open, I can just go to town and fill in that area. And just like that, that section, that background is done, and when this whole piece comes together, it will be a nice area visually to add contrast, but also give the viewer a place to rest in their eyes. So that's this part right here. And after this, we'll continue on with inking some details on the actual ape character itself.